Hey, fresh cut, what's up? It's the Culture Detective here investigating your favorite movies, and today I'm going to talk about Memento by Christopher Nolan. So, Memento is the second feature film from well-known English writer-director Christopher Nolan, whose movies are some of the most popular, most talked about movies of the last 3 decades. Actually, 2 decades, including Inception, which is one of my favorite movies of all times. We have The Dark Knight, one of the best, if not the best, comic book movie of all times. It's prequel and sequel, Batman Begins and The Dark Knight Rises. We have the more experimental war film Dunkirk. We have Interstellar, which I watched, but I didn't do a review on it because I didn't have the time, and I don't think I will. But it's pretty damn good as well, even though it has its plot holes and cheesy moments. We have the latest huge movie, Tenet, which is mind-bending, crazy, and also somewhat controversial with mixed reception. And yeah, The Prestige, really underrated movie, really friggin' underrated movie. After watching The Prestige, my mind was absolutely blown, and I just enjoyed The Prestige so freaking much. And finally, I watched Memento, and before going to this movie, I thought this would be the best of the best Nolan movies. I totally expected myself to give this a 10 out of 10. So maybe my expectations were too high, because actually Memento is not a 10 out of 10 in my opinion. It is not without its flaws. But that being said, though, it's still a friggin' masterpiece. It is still an ingenious movie. Memento is actually based off of a short story written by Christopher Nolan's brother, Jonathan Nolan, who would later go on to make the Westworld TV show. But anyways, short story by Jonathan Nolan, but later adapted by Christopher Nolan. But the way Christopher Nolan approached it, he decided to tell the story backwards, but in two separate timelines. So, shoot. How am I gonna show it? Well, I guess I'm not gonna show it. I'm gonna make a graph on the screen here. But essentially, every single Christopher Nolan movie has to have something to do with times and timelines just messing up. And in The Prestige, it's basically the same timeline, but we watch the movie at 3 different spots and onward. Of course, we have Inception, where different layers of dreams run on different times. In Interstellar, we have the theory of relativity and times working differently on different planets. In Dunkirk, it's basically the same timeline, but 3 different things happening at different speeds. And then in Tenet, it's basically timeline back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So in every single Christopher Nolan movie, you pretty much have to expect some weird thing going on with time. And same goes for Memento. Except the story isn't really that ambitious. Essentially, at the core of the story, it is a kind of a neo-noir. And it's nothing that crazy for Christopher Nolan. He started off with his first feature film, Following, which is also a bit of a neo-noir, and after this he even made Insomnia, which is also very noir flavored. But back to Memento, it is essentially about a guy named Lenny, or Leonard. He's played by Guy Pearce. His wife is murdered, raped and murdered, and he wants to find his wife's killer and kill him. Except that's gonna be a bit of a problem, because he has a memory problem where he can't remember everything since the incident. It's called anterograde amnesia, where he can't make new memories. So for every 5-6 minutes, he's just gonna forget everything that happened to him in the last 5 to 6 minutes. So he would give himself tattoos, he would have files, notes, he has a Polaroid camera, and he takes these Polaroids and write down these people, and he just tries to remember everything with these Polaroids and these tattoos. And that in and of itself is already a really, really interesting premise. But Christopher Nolan kicked it up one notch by telling the story backwards and forwards at the same time. And so the backwards timeline is basically from the end of the movie, and one scene backwards, one scene backwards, one scene backwards, one scene backwards. And these backward scenes are all in color. And then we have the forward timeline, which basically starts from the beginning of the story, and it goes forward and forward and forward and forward, and all these scenes are in black and white. And the real ending of this movie is actually the midpoint of the story, where the black and white and the colors sort of meet each other. And it's pretty friggin' brilliant. It's brilliant. Of course, you know, this whole time jumpy thing, it's not completely original or anything. Back then, we have Orson Welles with Citizen Kane, where it's basically told in a bunch of flashbacks. And then, of course, we have Stanley Kubrick's The Killing, which is told in many different perspectives with overlapping timelines. Of course, we have Pulp Fiction, which is told out of order. But this is different. Memento is different in that it tells the same story, but one backwards and one forwards, and meeting in the middle. And that is friggin' ingenious. He just makes it so refreshing, and I love it. That being said, though, again, this movie is not without its flaws. I went into this movie thinking that it's going to be the most mind-bending, puzzling, and entertaining thing ever. Actually, it's not, because for a bulk of the movie, in the forward sequences, in the black and white sequences, Lenny is basically talking on the phone. Just a very long, like 1 hour long phone call, basically. And those scenes are pretty boring. And he just talks, and it's like very exposition-y, and it doesn't really get anywhere. And those scenes are a little bit annoying sometimes. But the color sequences are all really great. Seeing how the things unfold backwards is amazing, because every time we see a backward scene, I mean, the scene doesn't literally go backward, but it happens backward scene by scene. So in the beginning of a colored scene, a backward scene, we're like, what? What happened? And then at the end of the scene, we're like, oh, so that's why. Oh, but every time in the beginning of a scene, we're like, what? And usually when we tell stories, it's the opposite. Usually in the beginning, it's like, oh, and then at the end, it's like, oh, what? Oh no, what's gonna happen next? But it's different for Memento, and again, those sequences are amazing. And yeah, there are plot twists, multiple plot twists at the end, of course, as expected of a Nolan movie, multiple plot twists. And yeah, these plot twists are ingenious, and the way this movie's structured makes the midpoint of the story the ending of the movie, but the plot twist also exists at the midpoint. But because the main character can't make new memories, he learns of the plot twist, and then he forgets about it. And so the story continues. But we learn it at the end of the movie that way. And as far as the technical stuff goes, it's also pretty damn good. The cinematography, editing, it's fine. You know, it's nothing all that mind blowing. It's nothing all that crazy. And the music is good. The music is good, and it's good to know that Christopher Nolan already started using dramatic strings before he even started making these big budget movies. You know, it's very Nolan-esque. So yeah, I'm gonna talk about spoilers. As always, when I talk about a Nolan movie, I have to talk about the spoilers. So if you haven't seen Memento, skip to the end, look at the score. I was also pretty confused in the first half an hour when Teddy was clearly the bad guy, when Teddy was clearly John G. I mean, it's even tattooed on Lenny. John G raped and murdered his wife, and Teddy is John G. But then you ask yourself, well, then how did he meet Teddy in the first place? And when you ask yourself that, you can't really ask Lenny because he doesn't know either. And then we have Natalie, who's set up to be this good person, this really good woman, and she's sort of a bit of a femme fatale in this case, where later in the movie it's actually revealed that she's also evil. But yeah, the way it's being revealed is amazing, because Natalie actually tests if Lenny's memory problem is real twice. Once in a bar where she spits into the cup and give Lenny the beer, and Lenny forgets about it. And then next time it's basically her pissing off Lenny. Lenny beats her up, and then she comes back to Lenny saying that Dodd beat her up, and Lenny's like, wow, what happened to you? And I guess it's confusing in that I don't know if it's Natalie trying to use Lenny to kill Dodd, or if it's Natalie trying to use Dodd to kill Lenny, but I think it's the latter, because in the beginning of the story, Lenny was actually the one who killed a certain John G. or Jimmy Grant. And Jimmy Grant is Natalie's boyfriend, so Natalie would want to find someone to kill Lenny for her. But that bit was a little bit confusing. There's also something strange about this time in that, so Lenny killed Jimmy Grant, and he wore Jimmy Grant's clothes, and in Jimmy Grant's clothes, in the pocket, he found a coaster which told Jimmy Grant to go to the bar to meet Natalie, and that probably happened within, say, 20 minutes or so. So maybe when Natalie met Lenny, maybe Natalie already knew that Jimmy Grant was dead. So if in that case, maybe Natalie knew that Lenny was the killer. But if she didn't know, maybe she wanted Lenny to help her kill Dodd. And then we have this strange bit where she pretends to help Lenny and tries to tell Lenny where Dodd is to kill Dodd, yet at the same time he tells Dodd the car that Lenny is driving and tries to get Dodd to kill Lenny. And then after that part, we have Teddy, we have Natalie. Natalie guides Lenny to the discount inn, and Natalie basically misleads Lenny to kill Teddy. So this basically implies that Natalie knew about Teddy the whole time. And Teddy also in the beginning seems like a bad guy, and then midway it's like, wait a second, Lenny killed the wrong person. And so Teddy seemed like a good guy, but at the end it's revealed that he's also kind of a bad guy, and that yes, he's a cop, but an ex-cop who's corrupted and dirty, and he's trying to buy drugs as well, and he's just trying to use Lenny to kill other people for him. And Natalie probably knew about this, and Natalie probably wanted to use Lenny to kill Teddy the whole time in the first place. But the whole thing was set up like it was almost a coincidence, because it wasn't Lenny's plan to meet Natalie. Lenny only met Natalie because there's a coaster in Jimmy Grant's jacket, which he wore. And yeah, we have the plot twists, which are also really good. First of all, we have the plot twist that apparently Lenny has already killed the killer of his wife a long time ago, and we don't know how long, but it's been a long time. And that the only reason why Lenny keeps chasing after this killer, even though this killer is already dead, is because he wants a purpose to live. And so he tricks himself by pretending that that he hasn't killed John G yet, so that when he forgets everything again, he's gonna be like, damn, I gotta find the murderer of my wife. And there's also another plot twist regarding Sammy Jankis. At first, when I learned about Sammy Jankis, it was like this very extraneous thing. That's why the first half of the movie wasn't really all that enjoyable for me, in that I didn't think that Sammy was that essential to the story, but later it is revealed that Lenny and Sammy are actually the same person, and that Lenny made up the story about Sammy just because he didn't want to feel bad about himself. And that is also a really good plot twist. And it's not like something that I've never ever seen before. Oh wow, this guy's actually that guy the whole time. But it's still effective, and ultimately the ending is actually kind of depressing, or should I say the midway point of the story. The ending of the movie, the midway point of the story, is actually really depressing in that it shows the real core of Lenny, where Lenny finally realizes what he's actually doing, and he keeps doing it because he had no other choice, because he wants to. And it's interesting, and again, it's very cleverly written. So, my mind is already at a very confused state right now, so I'm just gonna end it here. Memento is cleverly written, it's brilliant. Christopher Nolan is an amazing writer with such a big brain, galaxy-sized brain. Again, this movie is not without its flaws. There are certain scenes that I find redundant, especially in the first half, even though at the end they aren't redundant, but while I was watching it wasn't that enjoyable. And there were still a few logical problems. If you look at this entire film chronologically, you would find certain confusing bits. But still, as far as the second feature film for Christopher Nolan, it is an ingenious masterpiece, and I really like it. But that being said, I still enjoy Inception, The Dark Knight, The Prestige over this one. But this one is also really great. So yeah, Memento is a 9 out of 10. Really loving it, really liking it, and definitely a great movie. So, have you watched Memento? From 1 to 10, how much did you rate it? Like it, subscribe if you want more, and thanks for watching. Even though it's May 29th, I still have 2 movies to watch and review this month. The first one would be Chaos Walking, which I will watch like 10 minutes later. So that's going to be exciting. Also, I will be reviewing Death Note tomorrow. So that's awesome.